President of Arms of Hope, and we're really grateful for this day. Thank you so much for being here to celebrate with us, and so many of you have partnered with us over the last few years to make this happen. We're very grateful. I just wanted to give you, for those of you who didn't know, just to give you a little bit of background. Back in 2011, the spring of 2011, a fellow from our church passed away from a drug overdose, and at his funeral, one of his friends came up to me and said that he was the fourth or fifth friend that she had lost to a drug overdose. And right then, I just felt this voice. I felt God calling me and saying, you have to do something about this. So, as you are probably aware, when God asks you to do something, you don't really know what to expect. So, I took advantage of some opportunities. There was a training down in Cincinnati that I attended that was to help prepare the people who attended to help families of those who struggle with addiction. And so I went to that training, and then that fall, the fall of 2011, I offered that training at our church. And we had one session, and then I was asked to have another one, and that second one led to a prayer group. Eventually, that prayer group became known as Arms of Hope. And we prayed and prayed and wondered, how can we help this community? How can we partner with other agencies? How can we just be a light in this community to help those who are struggling with addiction? So we kept praying. One Saturday morning, we had a table out at the IGA, a prayer table, and taking prayer requests from folks. One Saturday evening, we had a booth out here at the Family Fun Night. And so we just kept praying, and then we just kind of wondered, what's going to happen. And then all of a sudden, we read about Judge Rudduck and the drug court being established in Clinton County, and we knew that was an answer to prayer, so we're very thankful for that, and praise God for that. And we kept praying, and then Hope Over Heroin. I don't know how many of you are familiar with that, but it was an event held in Wilmington a couple years ago, and it was kind of like a 2-day revival with speakers and singing for people who are struggling with addiction. And I was asked to kind of spearhead the efforts here in Sabina to get a Sabina group for anyone who would come to Hope Over Heroin and would need help once they came home. And so I sent a call out to area churches and others asking if anyone would like to help with the efforts and partner with Hope Over Heroin. And so our prayer group, our Arms of Hope prayer group, grew. And from that event, we helped with that, and from that, our group stayed together. The core of that prayer group then stayed together, and we continued to pray, and it was about a year ago, I guess, that we had a vision to open a storefront or some space in Sabina to provide help and hope for those who are struggling with addiction. And so a year ago, we continued to pray, and we didn't really know exactly what it was going to look like. We just continued to obey God as best as possible, and so here we are today. So thank you all. Thank you to everyone and anyone who has helped, whether financially, with your time, your energy, your muscles, to move furniture, to paint. We really appreciate it. What I would like to do before we go on is recognize all the members of Arms of Hope who have been with us up to this point. Sherry Stoops, Linda Mattingly, Vera Workman, Lois Steiner, Connie Green, see who am I forgetting?
Dan Cheney.
Sharon Groninger, Dan Cheney, and Scarlett. So we really appreciate all of your help, and our mission is to be a place where folks who are struggling, whether it's with addiction or other issues, or consequences of addiction, to help them encounter the unconditional love of Jesus Christ and to be a light in their lives. We would love to partner with agencies here in our community, and we just thank you so much for coming today. We're very glad you're here to celebrate with us. And at this point, I would like to introduce the mayor of our beloved village, Dean Hawk, to say a few words.
Thank you, Reverend Manson. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm glad to welcome so many people. I do want to give you a message from Desi Rogers, who is bringing the ribbon. She called me just before I got here and said, "Don't worry, I'm going to be here by 9:45 when I'm supposed to be on, but my baby's sick and had to go to the doctor, and so I was going to delay me, but she'll be along." And knowing Desi, she will make it. It's just we may have to wait a few minutes, but that's okay. I want to welcome everyone that's here to the village of Sabina. If you're from out of town, we're proud of our little town, and we're really proud of this group that's put this together. This is as Joni has said, this has been a better than 6-year effort that got this thing started, and it's been an awful lot of prayer over that amount of time, and I think they're on the right track. I've had occasion in the last couple of years to talk to several people that were in various different relationships, but dealing with people who are addicted to various things, particularly the opioid issues. And I always ask the question, because I really believe in the faith-based approach to these things, I always ask the question, do you know of anyone who has ever completely broke their ties to addiction without a religious experience? And the answer is always something like, only by the grace and help of God can this beast be brought under control. I had a meeting this morning, a men's meeting up at our church in Washington Courthouse, and was talking to our pastor about that very same thing this morning, and that seems to be the faith-based approach, seems to be the proper and correct way to bring help to people that are addicted. And of course, this organization wants to do to be beneficial to the families as well as the victims of addiction, be there for the families and be a place for people that have needs of many kinds that they will be here to fulfill. If you go back and look at what they've done over the last 6 years, all this prayer, I set it down that it's been years and years of meeting and prayers. It's been weeks and weeks and weeks of paperwork, and it's been maybe months and months and months of paperwork, and weeks and weeks and weeks of just plain grunt work getting this room ready. So it was a great difference in this room than what it was a couple of months ago when I saw it, and back when, not too long ago, when it was an antique store. But one thing about it, with all the effort that's been put into this, is you have to, I want to say that that God will, we hope that God, I know that God will bless this and make it a success. But one thing about it, to remember this, that one more soul in heaven is worth all the effort. And I guess that's about all I can say about that.
Thank you, Dean. Now at this time, I would like to introduce the Clinton County Common Pleas Judge, Rudduck.
Look what God hath wrought with the little help of his friends. Thank you, Mayor, for those remarks, because it's kind of hard to follow that, because it actually patterns the philosophy I have with regard to what we're trying to do here. And this is such an inspiring day for the village, and also, honestly, for me. You got the Holy Spirit hit you a little earlier than it did me on this issue. 2011, I didn't know that until today. I come from a background where my parents were fairly strict, spare the rod, spoil the child, that sort of thing. And we grew up in a society where the idea was we deter people from doing bad things by punishing them. And I lived by that. I was a military policeman in the Army, fairly strict law enforcement. And when I started out my judicial career in 1985, I kind of subscribed to that we're going to deter people from criminal activity by punishing them, and hopefully they'll learn their lesson and they won't want to do that again. We went through, during that period of time, I've been a judge since 1985, a number of epidemics. Earlier, when I was in the Army, guys were coming back from Vietnam, and we had the heroin epidemic at that time that was nowhere near what we're facing today. And there are a number of reasons for that. But we got through that. And then in the 80s, we had the crack cocaine epidemic, Miami Vice, remember those shows? And then in the 90s, for you farmers, I know you're aware of the methamphetamine epidemic, because guys were coming in and trying to steal anhydrous ammonia. And that methamphetamine is a horrible drug, and we still have it today. But then all of a sudden, I started seeing some things in the late 2000s and early 2000s, some drug names I'd never seen before, buprenorphine, Suboxone, things like this. And I said, what the heck is going on? And coupled that with the idea of I'm getting these guys that I'm putting in jail or sending to prison for possession of these drugs, we let them out, and all of a sudden I'm reading obituaries in the news journal of these young people who are dying. And then I'm getting termination notices for probation where it said he's deceased. And I started looking at it and getting educated in around 2012, 2013, and I really believe it was the Holy Spirit that was moving me in this direction. And as I studied and got educated, I realized how ignorant I was about how opioids and opiates affect the brain. And in 2014, we put a little ad in the news journal asking the public about whether they'd like to have a public forum to discuss the opioid issues here in Clinton County. I didn't know how many people would come. And in July of 2014, we opened the doors to the courtroom about 4 o'clock, and it was flooded. We had a standing room only crowd, and we spent about 2 hours there hearing stories about what opiates and opioids had done to those particular individuals. And after that, at that time, at the end of the meeting, I said, we're going to establish a drug court. I didn't realize you're talking about paperwork, how hard it is. It's not something I can just say, I think I'll have a drug court. For those of you who don't even know what a drug court is, it is a therapeutic treatment docket within the confines of the Clinton County Common Pleas Court. When I first broached this subject to the commissioners, they said, okay, how much is this going to cost? Are we going to need another judge? And I said, it's not going to cost you a dime, because all we're doing is taking a segment of the population that we have on probation right now and plugging them in if they want to. Because I'm not going to take people in there that don't want recovery. They have to apply for it. We take them out of the normal criminal process, even though it is still in the criminal process. And I become the head of what's called a treatment team to deal with the individual who's before me. It is completely different, and I felt like the barriers were taken off. You know, Dennis is an attorney. He knows the barriers between church and state and how judges are impartial. Well, I 100% agree with the mayor that the recovery here, the ultimate recovery, is Jesus Christ. And even though I can't promote that from the bench, the philosophy comes through what we're trying to do. And so the way it worked, we eventually got approved by the Ohio Supreme Court and certified as a specialized docket. And it doesn't cost any more money because I was using the same supervision officers. And the only thing is I just spend more time with the individual who was before me. In the past, the only time I would see somebody in this area would be if they messed up, you know, the first time they're in there pleading guilty to the drugs and I'm punishing them, or if they, after I put them on probation, they're back in because they violated probation. And the way the drug court works is they have to come in every, twice a month to meet me, and I don't even have my robe on. We call these status review hearings. And we have a treatment team, which includes the service providers and the supervision officers who are engaged with the individual. And we meet beforehand, and I go in with the whole group that is in the drug court, and in front of everybody, and we invite the public. We hope, we just had one yesterday. We filled the back of the courtroom, where we talk to these people and praise them when they do well, and we get on them a little bit when they mess up. I have this placard that I put on, and the motto of the drug court is this, and maybe I'm sure most of you Christians will understand it. It says this: I do not require perfection, but I do demand honesty. And that's what I need, because we've hidden this issue so long in terms of the offender, the person that's afflicted hides it, lies, steals, that sort of thing. The family members that are supporting them are stigmatized, thinking that their son or daughter is a criminal. And we want to get the public educated that this is a health issue. It happens to be within the criminal justice system, and we haven't had a way of dealing with criminal justice except through punishment. The drug court gives us a way to deal with it as a health issue. And that's what we're doing. It initially was a tough sell. I still am having trouble with law enforcement trying to understand this, but it's an educational issue, and there are a number of law enforcement officials who understand it as a health issue, but the legislature has just put it in the criminal justice system. So where are we now? In 2015, January, we had our first drug court. And the idea of the drug court is exactly what you guys are doing here. We were to how are we going to deal with this in Clinton County with the number of overdoses? And let me tell you, it's still going on. It's not reported. Over the last 3 years, we've had over 40 people die in this county as a result of that. That's underreported, I believe, but at least that much. But here's the deal. You all heard of Narcan, which is this antidote which brings people back who have overdosed who might otherwise die. In 2014, in the city of Wilmington, about 40 doses of Narcan were administered. And then in 2015, about 60 some. Do you know how many have been administered in 2017 through October? 171. Think where we would be in terms of deaths if this drug wasn't even available. So I only bring that up to point out that if we think, every time we get a little too cocky and think we're doing well, you got to look at all these number of overdoses that we're having where people are being revived. I've often believed that, and this is what I was getting back to about the drug court, this problem is not going to be solved in Washington, D.C. or Columbus. It is a local problem, and every county has different ways to go about it. And I'm pretty conversant with Clinton County. I know we have a lot of faith-based people in here. And I thought the best way to do this was to have the drug court as the hub and develop services around it. And so little did I know Joni was already planning this, and God was already planning this in 2011. So it was just a natural fit when we did the drug court for Joni to be a partner. And she says, how can we do this? And she talked to me after the drug court got established a little bit about what she hoped to do. Today, you guys are celebrating that vision. Now, in terms of the drug court, we've had 2 graduations. People ask me, is it a success? Well, you know, I don't think we're going to know whether it's a success until 5 or 10 years down the road, because the triggering events that trigger the use of these drugs are always going to be there for these people. But it takes not weeks, not months, but years for people that have this affliction to get their brain rewired so that they'll be able to make the right decisions. And so I think, I say, well, we're having graduation ceremonies, which I told Joni the next one is at the Wilmington. And I want the church, I'm having these graduation ceremonies in churches for reasons pretty obvious, I would think, because it's kind of like a revival, where we're having a new birth, a new life for these people. And the next one, and you're all invited because they are so inspirational, is going to be November 17th, 2 weeks from last night, in the Wilmington Church of Christ. And I just want to fill that place, and here's the exciting news. The very first graduation, we had one person graduate. We had it at the Presbyterian Church, and we had 100 and some people coming there for that person. The next one was in the Presbyterian Church, and we had a little more. We had one graduate. You have to understand, that's not bad because it takes 18 months in the program before I even would consider them a graduate. On November 17th, we're going to have 7 graduates. 7. So, I mean, yeah. And just to see how they've evolved over time, from where they were to where they are, how confident they are. We're removing the stigma from the disease. They shouldn't have anything to be ashamed of. And so it is working, and programs like this just fit right in to what we're trying to do. So I encourage you to keep the faith, be strong, spread the word about this. And it's not really, they're not wanting to be on these drugs. I mean, that is the bottom line. It's not a choice after a while. And I really applaud what you're doing, and we need to spread this throughout the county. So anyway, thank you, and God bless you all. Okay. 7 o'clock, November 17th.
And that graduation is 7 o'clock.
7 o'clock at the church.
November 17th. So mark your calendars. Thank you very much. We have someone going to sing, correct? I think we have someone going to sing. So